Good afternoon. In the interest of time, we're going to start the June 20th UNC committee hearing as a subcommittee. And I see Senator Simitian. He is ready on time. And we're going to hear SB 23. Simitian, Mr. Simitian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. As you all will recall, the legislature approved and the governor recently signed Senate Bill 2 in the first extraordinary session, which increased the renewable portfolio standard from 20% by 2010 to 33% by 2020. A successful endeavor, I think, Mr. Chairman, because of the work and commitment from a great many people, including you as chair in this committee over a great many hearings, as you will recall. So thank you once again. Given the context in which the measure was passed, ultimately the decision was to take no amendments during the final days of the legislative process on Senate Bill 2X. The decision was made that going forward, if there was cleanup work to do, it could be done in a follow-on vehicle. This is such a vehicle. There are just three issues that are addressed here. Your analysis points them out quite clearly. They are all date modifications, the first giving the California Energy Commission until June 30, 2012, rather than 2011, to submit its run-of-the-river hydroelectric facility study to the legislature. The second giving the PUC, the California Public Utilities Commission, until July 1st of 2012, rather than 2011, to determine the effective load carrying capacity of wind and solar. And the third and final change being that the CEC, the California Energy Commission, would be given until July 1st, 2012, again, rather than 2011, to promulgate regulations for implementing the 33% RPS standard for municipalities. All of these are a function of the fact that the language in the bill reflected the earlier version, which we had hoped would be passed in 2010, and therefore 2011 dates made sense. Since the bill was in fact passed in 2011, 2012 dates now make sense. This is certainly far from an exhaustive list of every issue that was still hanging out there, but these are three on which we have consensus and I think no opposition. As others emerge where there is a genuine consensus, we'll continue to look at those, including with your staff and the staff of other members who've been involved. Mr. Chesbrough's office obviously is the chair of another relevant policy committee, and Ms. Skinner, who was part of the earlier discussions as well. And I would respectfully ask for an aye vote today.
Thank you, Senator Simitian. Any witnesses in support? Please come forward.
Hello, Valerie Torella, Pacific Gas and Electric Company. We have a support if amended position on this vehicle that we are hoping continues to be the sort of RPS cleanup measure. There are a couple of outstanding items in our view. And
just hold 1 minute. Yes. We're going to establish a quorum. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Bradford.
Present.
Fletcher. Buchanan. Here. Fong. Here. Fuentes. Furtani, Gaines, Hernandez, Huffman, here. Knight, Ma, here. Nastandi, here. Skinner, Swanson, Valadeo. Here.
Okay. A quorum has been established. You can continue.
Thank you. And those outstanding issues we feel address cost concerns for our customers. And then in terms of implementation, would in fact ease the implementation by trying to, facilitate similar rules that are in place for the 20% RPS at the PUC. So the two issues are things that you've heard about many times: banking of excess procurement and those rules surrounding that. We think that the 10 years is too restrictive and would like to lower that. And then the issue of the out-of-state buckets 2 and 3. We'd like to see those collapsed, which would be in line with the Commission's TREC decision that put all of those, in one bucket, if you will. So we feel both of those changes together would bring value to these resources for our customers. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Any additional witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition? Seeing and hearing none. Committee members, any questions? Mr. Swanson?
What about that statement that was just made?
There are a number of issues that I would say are still being kicked about the Capitol. And the challenge, of course, Assembly member, is that one person's cleanup item is another person's undoing of the original legislation. So my goal has been to identify for inclusion in this vehicle areas where we have, I think, broadly based consensus, which is why I want to continue to meet with some of the stakeholders and some of the principles in the Assembly discussion about where are the areas where we really do have consensus, or if not unanimity, at least pretty darn close. There are other areas where we're just going to have to say we continue to agree to disagree, and not everybody's going to get everything they wanted. I think we were clear about that in the previous hearings, but we'll keep talking.
Thank you very much.
And Mr. Chairman, when I was here last, I promised you that I would stay on this until the day I walked out the door, until the moment I walked out the door. You made it very plain on the record that that had to be the moment I walked out the door, not out of your committee hearing, but until my very last moment, and that continues to be the case. I'll stay on it until the moment I walk out the door.
Thank you, Ms. Buchanan.
Thank you. I know that not too many people have sympathy towards PG&E right now, but their problem in terms of what counts towards renewables is the same problem that Sacramento Municipal Utility District had. And my concern, is the same concern I issued earlier, is when we pass a bill and require companies to do something, okay, and then and then they go ahead and do it, and then we change the rules down the road and penalize them for being early adopters. It seems to me that there would be no reason in the future for someone to try and be that early adopter, because SMUD also has projects in which it's invested that won't count towards the 33%.
We're still looking at that issue of how to treat early adopters. That is somewhat different, however, from the issues that PG&E is raising about 5-year contracts versus 10-year contracts for banking. I think I'll just let it go at that. But on the issue,
well, they're different, but they're similar. But I do believe that, like I said, I was sort of assured in this committee when I voted that we would be addressing that, and I hope that that's still at the top of your list.
It's still under discussion. That's as far as I can go and be frank with you, ma'am.
Mr. Huffman.
I was going to offer to move the bill, and I appreciate the challenge Senator Simitian has in terms of surgically opening up just enough of the bill to correct a few deadlines here on the Energy Commission without reopening the entire Pandora's box. We passed a rather historic piece of legislation, and I don't want to put any of that in jeopardy, so I'd like to support the Senator in keeping this as narrow as possible.
Mr. Fong, second. Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second. Motion by Mr. Huffman, second by Mr. Fong. The committee's recommendation is to do pass the natural resources, and if I may add, I hear the concerns of Ms. Buchanan and Swanson, as well as many others that we've had discussion offline, and I thank the Senator for his commitment to move forward and addressing some of the concerns that were originally addressed in his bill back in March that we chose to not address at that time. And without getting in front of this committee or myself, we know there will be some additional efforts to fix whatever we feel is still out there as it relates to the RPS bill. So I don't think this is our last bite at the apple, but this is one of the quick corrections we can make as it relates, again, to timelines and dates and better identifying the municipalities issue, because let me be clear, we had a typo on page 2, bullet 5, and it should state that the municipal utilities requested an extension to the prescriptive 20% by 2014 instead of 30% by 2014. So let's be clear that has been corrected, and RPS cleanup bill extends deadlines for the PUC and CEC to provide reports and promulgate the regulations from 2011 to 2012. Okay, so we're just really addressing some date timelines that have been brought to our attention that makes this bill move a little quicker. So on that note, we have a motion, we have a second. Mr. Simitian, would you like to close?
Appreciate the committee's time and respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Madam Secretary, call the roll.
Bradford.
Aye.
Bradford, aye. Fletcher. Buchanan. Buchanan, aye. Fong. Fong, aye. Fuentes. Fuentes, aye. Furutani. Furutani, aye. Gaines. Hernandez. Hernandez, aye. Huffman. Huffman, aye. Knight. Knight, no. Ma. Ma, aye. Nastandi. Nastandi, I. Skinner. Swanson. Swanson, I. Valadeo. Valadeo, no.
Senator, your bill is out 10-2.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members.
Thank you. And I should have stated this at the beginning. Assemblymember Gaines will be replacing Assemblymember Gurrell for the rest of the hearings this legislative cycle. And Assemblyman Fletcher is absent today, and there will be no replacement. SB 379 by Fuller and SB 705 by Leno has been pulled from the hearing and will not be heard today. And SB 764 by Senator Padilla is on consent for today. So that's our only other item. So, yes, it's been moved by Mr. Fuentes, second by Ms. Buchanan on the consent calendar. Madam Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Bradford.
Aye.
Bradford, I. Fletcher. Buchanan. Buchanan, I. Fong. Fong, I. Fuentes. Fuentes, I. Furutani. Furutani, I. Gaines. Hernandez. Hernandez, I. Huffman. Huffman, I. Knight. Knight, I. Ma. Ma, I. Nastandi. Nastandi, I. Skinner. Swanson.
Swanson, aye.
Swanson, I. Valadeo. Valadeo, I. Consent is out.
The consent is out, and members, thank you for your attendance today. That concludes the business for the June 20th UNC hearing, and that bill was out on consent 12-0. That concludes our business for the day. The committee stands adjourned.